Right, so we're just doing a little bit of a check to see if everyone can hear us okay. So if you could just write in the comments if you can hear me, that would be really great. Right, okay, so everyone can hear me. So I'm going to make a start. So firstly, thank you for joining us today for the Craft for Cats live craft along. We've been really excited for this workshop, and we hope you guys are as well. So the craft that we're going to be doing today will be some pottery painting. So don't worry if you've never done any pottery painting before, we're going to go through it step by step. You might not finish your piece during the craft along because I am going to split it into two parts. And yeah, so feel free to keep working on it after the event as well. And the recording will be available if you can't make it today. So I'd like to start by just introducing myself and talking a little bit about today's craft. So my name's Naomi and I'm going to be doing the tutorial today, and then there's Pepe who is in the background.
Hiya!
And he's going to be managing all the technical side of things and answering any questions that you have. So if there's anything during the craft along that you've missed or you want me to repeat, just pop it in the comments and Pepe will let me know and we can go back to that. So we run a business together called Jasmine Pottery Studios. So basically we cover kind of all aspects of pottery and clay. So we have a studio in Wakefield where we do pottery painting, clay workshops, and then I do like wheel tutorials as well. I don't know if anybody's a big fan of the pottery throwdown or anything, but we've been so busy since that's been on. So alongside doing the studio, we also do craft kits, and we have like online tutorials and stuff as well. So you might have seen me before doing the summer kit, which we did the clay pots. I've got one of my clay pots here, using as a paintbrush holder today. So if you enjoyed that kit, I hope you're going to like this one too. So pottery painting is a really nice, relaxing activity, so take your time with it and just enjoy the process. So I thought I'd let you know a little bit about the ceramics that are in your kit. So they have been handmade by us. So we have used a white earthenware clay, and we've had some special, so we designed two kits. So we designed two shapes. So we had them 3D printed. So these are the 3D printed cutters that we had specially made. So each of your kits has been specially designed just for the cat's protection, which is really exciting and makes them really special and unique. So they have been through the kiln, so they've been fired to over 1,000 degrees, and they've been cooking in the kiln for over 24 hours. So that's 8 to 10 hours heat work and then some cool down time as well before they've been then packaged up and sent to you. So that's the journey of your cat before it came to you, and yeah, I hope you've all received your kits and are ready to make a start. So before we do start, there's a few extras that you might need. So the first thing is some water, so just a little pot of water, a little bit of kitchen roll, a pencil, and a rubber as well, and a brew as well if you want one. So yeah, I'll give you a few minutes to get anything extras that you might need, and then we're going to unbox a kit together. Right, so I'll start by just opening the kit and explaining a little bit about what's inside. So we have here a little bit of information about your kit, and just to let everybody know that £10 from every kit is donated to Cats Protection. And just if anybody has donated to their local Cats Protection centre as well, just let us know in the comments which one you've donated to. And then also in your kit is some instructions. So this is great to refer back to. Obviously you'll have the video from today, but if there's any extra things that you're wondering about, it'll probably be in here. So I'm just going to point out in here as well, there is a page at the back just here. So this is like a bit of a planning page. So if you did want to draw your design out before drawing straight onto the ceramics, here's your kind of practice pieces. So you can kind of plan them out first before committing to drawing onto your ceramics. So that's just at the back of your booklet there. Then we have 2 paintbrushes in your kit. So you should have a round tip one and a flat tip one as well. So they will vary in size. Some of them will be, the flat tip one will be smaller, or the round tip one will be bigger. It varies from each kit because they're all packed differently. And then you've got your acrylic paints. So you should have a set of 4 paints, a paint palette, and your ceramic cats. The ceramic cats all have a little hook in the top, so you can use it to hang. Right, okay. So for the first part of the craft along, I'm going to focus on doing the abstract cat. So if you are joining us for the classic cat, that's going to be starting from 11 o'clock, but feel free to watch along because there's tips that are in both that can be translatable as well. So if you are doing the abstract cat, get everything ready and set up, and we'll make a start. Okay, so I'm going to switch to using the close-up camera now. So before we start doing our first step, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the abstract cat because it's quite open to creative freedom. It can be whatever you want it to be, really. So, you know, you might be inspired by a particular artist or a trend. So I'm just going to show you a few of the examples that I've got here. So this one here was inspired by Henry Matisse, looking at kind of abstract shapes and colours and colour mixing. And then this one here was inspired by a little bit of a trend that's going on at the moment. Everybody in the studio seems to be painting pottery with fruit on. So I just kind of was inspired by that really and thought, why not paint some fruit on a cat? And then the one that I'm going to be focusing on today is the Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. So looking at Impressionist painting and some of the techniques that I used within that art form. Right, so you will need your pencils and rubbers at the ready now. And we're going to start by drawing out the design. So with the Starry Night design, you can see that I've already made a start on sketching that out. So from the top, what I've done here is just drawn the first kind of swirl down the very centre. Now it can be quite useful to have a reference picture as well, so if you want to get up Starry Night on your device, or whether you've got a picture that you can print out, it's always good to have a bit of a reference photo to work from as well. So from this one, what I've done is I've started from the corner near the ear and I've just done that first swirl down into the centre of the cat, and then I've marked out some of the hills down here, and then I've decided on my design to include some of the village buildings down at the bottom here as well. And then where the tail is, this is where I've done the tree. So this is where I've drawn in the tree from that painting. So if you do make any mistakes when you're drawing on with the pencil, so if you've decided to do some lines and you're not quite happy with it, you can always rub them out, and that'll just bring back the white surface of the ceramic. So just grabbing your rubber and just rubbing away any mistakes. So when you are sketching on your design, just make sure not to put on too much pencil line, because it's just an extra thing that can smudge and stuff. So keep it kind of basic, keep it like a basic sketch, yeah. And the most of the next parts are going to be when we start painting. So for this next part, we're going to talk a little bit about colour mixing. So now I've got my design roughly drawn onto my cat. You know, it doesn't need to be perfect at this stage, it's just a little sketch. So we're going to start by doing a little bit of colour mixing. So I'm going to hold up my second step. So I have had to kind of pre-prepare some of these bits, just because we have to wait for paint to dry and stuff, so I can kind of move on and show you the next steps. I have kind of got a step ahead that I'll keep referring back to as well as we paint. So on the base of my cat, I've got these buildings here, and then you can see that I've used different shades at the bottom. So it starts off with the greens, so we've got the greens on the tree and then the greens on the hills, and then on the buildings we've got a little bit of a purple and grey. So we're going to start off doing a bit of colour mixing around those four colours. So with your paint palette, we're going to start off by mixing a dark purple. So the way that I do the colour mixing in this paint palette is I always put my colours to the edge of the kind of bowl or well, and then drag it down into the centre, and that way you have a little bit more control over those colours as well. So we're going to start by mixing a dark purple. So for the dark purple, you want to start with your red. So we're going to do 1 part red. So just when I say 1 part, I'm just doing 1 squeeze of red. So we don't need too much, so just a little bit should be enough, because it's just for the roofs of the house. So we don't need to give it a big squeeze. And then we're going to do 1 part blue. So because I'm going for a dark purple, I'm using kind of equal parts of the red and blue together. And then what I'm going to do next is just start with the red and just drag those colours together, giving them a mix kind of in the middle, and then working those colours together. So do make sure you've got it all nicely mixed in before you start painting. Alright, so you can see now it's got a nice dark purple colour. So I'm ready to start painting the roof of the house. So I'm using my smaller brush, and I'm just going to fill in the very tops of the buildings. So just using that brush just to so you don't need to add any water to it, you're just painting directly with the paints at this stage. You can always move your ceramic around as well if you need to get a different angle. Right, and then I'm just going to fill in some of the door details. So on one of them I've done like a church, so I'm just going to use a little bit of the purple on the very top of there. And then on the houses, I'm just going to highlight the actual structure of that building as well with the dark purple. And then we're going to mix like a purpley grey for the rest of the building. So just take your time, really nice light brush strokes. So using your smallest brush for this bit. Right, so once you have outlined the buildings in the purple and done the purple roofs, we're ready to move on to mixing a grey. So if I just hold this one up here for you to take a look at, we've got like a purpley grey colour on the main buildings. So to mix the grey, we're going to have 1 part purple, so we're going to reuse this purple that we've already mixed.
So just before we mix the next colour, I'm just going to interrupt with a question. Somebody's asked that if they're painting a base coat, when's best to do the sketch design? Right,
yeah, I forgot to say about that. So if you are doing a base coat, paint the full colour that you want in it to be. So I'll just hold this one up. So you want to paint the full colour on before applying any drawing lines or anything, and then you want to allow that to dry before then doing your pencil drawing.
Somebody's just asked if they do a base coat, can they paint all the designs on top?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So during this whole craft along, we're going to be painting layers upon layers. So that's why I've got some pre-planned stuff. So you do need to allow time between coats to dry completely. So the best works are the ones that have got layers of paint on. So sometimes like lighter colours, so if I just hold this one up here, so sometimes colours like white on top of a darker colour will need a few coats. So just making sure to allow those coats to dry between it as well, and then you get your brighter colours. Right, so yeah, if anybody does have any more questions or anything, feel free to stop me and I can always go back and revisit that. So for the next step, I'm just going to talk a little bit about mixing a grey colour. So we're going to use this purple that we've already started with, and then use a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow. So we're going to have 1 part purple, which is that bit, and then kind of a quarter of yellow, so just a little tiny bit. So always with your paints, working with a small bit at a time, and that saves you from using too much and also getting the wrong colour as well. It's always good to do a little bit at a time, and we can always correct it. But whereas if we've got too much, it's hard to go back, if that makes sense. So we've got 1 part purple, 1 part yellow, and then we want 1 part white as well for this one. So just giving a little squeeze of white in there. And then dragging those colours down to the middle. So I've started with them on the edge, and I'm just going to drag them into the middle, and then I have a little bit more control over the shade that it's going to end up. So the reason we're adding the yellow is to add that more grey colour, because if we just add white, we'll get more of a lilac, light purple. So just adding that little bit of yellow gives it a kind of more grey tone. So again, just making sure you're mixing all that paint in. So you might, you know, if you feel like you've got too much yellow, you don't need to use it all. That's why it's on the edge. Yeah, so you can see that colour starting to change there in the middle. So it's gone to like a grey tone now. Obviously the colours do look slightly different in real life to how they do on the camera, but you know, I've got a lot of lights on here and it's still looks a lot darker than it does in real life. So you can see that colour tone starting to change, and then just keep working with mixing those two colours into your purple until you get the desired shade of grey that you're looking for. So it is, when I say grey, it is more of a purpley grey because I do want it to still match the roof of the house. So then just going in with your colour and just filling that gaps in there. Okay, so the next colour that we're going to look at is mixing a selection of greens. So over on this piece here, I've got some greens down at the bottom. So I've got like a dark green down here and then a mid green, and then I've got a little bit of a lighter green going on in the tree. So we're going to mix 3 different tones of green next. So it is quite amazing how much you can actually mix with just a few colours really. So kind of this whole cat is just being mixed with a variation of different parts of colour. So just when you are using your brush and you give it a clean, just make sure to wipe it on a paper towel, because sometimes you can have a little bit of the colour, even though it's being washed, a little bit of colour can still come off. So it's always good to just give it a good dry between using each colour, and it stops that contamination then. So we're going to go firstly for a dark green. So for the dark green we want to do 2 parts blue. So we've got so when I say 2 parts, it's just going to be a bigger bit of blue and then 1 part yellow, we're going to give that a little mix. So again, just dragging those colours into the centre and mixing them, just so you've got that control over the shade a little bit more. Yeah, so essentially for this bit you want twice as much blue as you do yellow, and that'll give you that darker tone. So with the dark green, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this bit down on this first hill down here. So I'm just going to mark out where that's going to go, and I'm going to fill that in with my dark green. Next we're going to move on to mixing a mid green. So for this bit, it's 2 parts yellow and 1 part blue. So the yellow really gives it a lighter tone. So a big squeeze of yellow, and then you want half of that amount, so 1 part blue. Yeah, so this makes more of a like khaki green, so it's got a lot more of a lighter tone to it. Yeah, so just making sure to give that a good mix. And then for that bit, I'm going to use for the hills just directly behind the houses, so just filling in a bit at the bottom. So this is like your base coat essentially for your rolling hills, so we are going to be going over them again with some other tones and colours and building up the movement and light on there. So just filling in that block of colour. And then for the next colour mix, we're going to do light green. So with your 2 greens that you've got so far as well, you can start working on doing the tree. So I've just done the tree going up along the tail because I felt like that was quite a natural nice point to have it. So just with your greens that you've got so far, just painting in some of those leaves on the tree. So getting some of your other colour. So you're just layering those 2 greens up, and then what we're going to do next is mix a lighter green, and this can be to add a little bit of a highlight again to your tree, just to really bring it to life and add more colour to it. So for a light green, it's 3 parts yellow, so that's a big squeeze of yellow, and then 1 part blue. So just dragging those colours together and just mixing it so we've got a nice light green. So this is a much more of a lime green colour. I'll just hold that up. Yeah, so I'm still working on mixing it here. Colour mixing is really fun as well. It's quite satisfying when you just play around with those different kind of parts. So you can get different tones. And then we're just going to highlight some of that green on your tree with that lighter colour. I'm just going to hold that up again. Yeah. So now we've got the selection of greens filled in. We're just going to work on next mixing some blues. So you can see on this one here, I've got some different shades of blue for the different hills. So I've got essentially three tones. So I've got like a light blue, a really dark blue here, and then a kind of mid blue across the top there. And then we'll basically keep on mixing different shades of blue to fill in this sky here as well. So before I go into the mixing of the blues, I just want to show you quickly how many, just as a bit of a inspiration of an example of how many shades of blue we can get from those 4 colours. So just a little tip as well, if you have mixed the colour and you want to save it for later on for another layer, just wrap your paint palette in some plastic and that'll keep your paint from drying out. So I'm just going to open this up and just show you. Yeah, so you can see there's so many different shades of blue in there, just all using those 4 colours. Oh, it looks quite dark on the camera, but I'm just going to grab another paint palette for this next bit just so it's clear. Okay, so we're going to start by mixing a light blue, which is 1 part blue and then 2 parts white. And of course, the more white that you add, the more it'll change the tone. So you can play around with just adding white to get different shades of light blue as well. And then just making sure your brush has not got any green on before you start as well. Okay, so I've got 1 part blue, 2 parts white. A bit more white in there. So we're going for a nice light blue for those hills just directly behind the green hills. So just dragging those colours down to the bottom and giving it a good mix. So if you think, oh, you know, I'm not quite happy with that blue, it's a little bit too blue, you can always add a bit more white to it. So just doing it a little bit at a time until you're happy with the tone of that light blue, and then just filling in those hills. Right, okay, so next I'm going to work on mixing a dark blue. So for the dark blue, we're going to need 1 part blue, and then we want a tiny bit of red, so kind of like a 1/4 part red, just a little smidge. We don't want it to be purple, so we don't want to have too much red. We want it to be like a nice deep navy blue. So adding a little bit of red to blue really does give it like a nice deeper tone. I always like to mix any paint from a tube. I think can be really enhanced by just adding a little bit of a colour. So like your blues always, it goes a much nicer deep blue with just a tiny bit of red. It kind of gives it a navy look to it. So of course it, yes, I don't know if you can see that now, so it's a much deeper blue in comparison to what it was like before. So it's not purple, it's like a navy blue. So next we're going to start filling in the dark blue bit, which is just here. So I'm just going to paint that on quickly, and then we'll move to going for the kind of mid blue, and then we're going to go for a greeny blue as well. So for the mid blue, we want to have 1 part blue. So it's good to do a little bit of extra of these blues as well, because we're going to be mixing them into the into the sky as well. So we're going to have, for this mid blue, it's 1 part blue, one part white, and just a tiny little bit of red. So like we did before, just not too much. Yeah, so always keep the colours towards the top of your well, and then you've got a little bit more control over it. You don't have to use all of the colour if you don't want to. Dragging it into the middle and just giving that a nice mix, so we get, it wants to be like a mid blue colour. Yeah, so the trick is with that, just not too much red, just a tiny bit, and then that bit's going to go at the back here. Right. So the last colour that we're going to mix up is more of a greeny blue. So this is just, we'll kind of use these colours as well in the hills. So the hills, we've kind of done the base colour with the greens, but we go over it with more of a greeny blue, because on this particular painting there's lots of different tones of blues and greens. So to make a greeny blue, we're going to do 3 parts blue, so giving it a big squeeze of blue. Just going to move this up a little bit. So 3 parts blue, 1 part yellow, and just a tiny little bit of red. You have to be quite gentle when you squeeze it out, because they can come out quite fast sometimes, especially certain colours, so just do it very carefully and do it on the edge. So we're going to mix the green up first. And this kind of makes like a really nice teal colour. Just need to make sure you get the right parts. Yeah, one of my favourite colours, this. So I don't know if you can see that now. So it makes like a lovely teal blue. So for the next part, we're going to be looking at the sky. So this particular painting is quite popular for that expression of movement and light. So it's very common in Impressionist paintings to have lots of different brush strokes and lots of different colour, and looking at where that light is meeting the movement on the picture. So for this next bit, we're going to do the brush stroke technique, which is called dry brushing. So for this bit, you'll need your round tip brush. So, you know, it'll vary. It might be your bigger one or it might be a smaller one. It doesn't really matter too much for this bit, you know, it doesn't matter about the size of it, because the technique will still be the same, and the big brush works really nice as well because it gives a bigger surface covering, but you know, it doesn't really matter too much which one you use. So to start with, you know, you'll mix up a few different blues and get them all ready. So I'll just got mine pre-done here. So just exploring, adding a little bit of white as well to the colours that you've mixed, and just really using all of that paint palette just to fill up. You can always use your green colours as well and add a bit of blue to them to give you lots of different tones. So with the dry brush technique, you want to just get a little bit of paint. So make sure your brush is completely dry before you start. I might need a full screen for this one. Yeah, okay. So just layering up that colour. So I'm going to start with like a little bit of my darker blue. And you can see it kind of comes down darker in this corner, and then I bring a little bit of that darkness down into this corner here. So basically most of the corners are where you've got your darker bits, but a little bit flows down the very centre as well. So just loading a little bit of paint onto your brush, and then just making sure you've not got too much, and then just very lightly bringing that brush. So I'm using my bigger brush to start with, but you know, it doesn't really matter if it's your bigger brush or your smaller one. You just want to make sure that you've not got too much paint on. If you feel like you've got a bit too much paint on, you can always you know, wipe a bit off onto your palette. So I'm going to start by just lightly brushing that over into the corners where my darker bits are. So you'll see it starts to make like these lines where the brush is not like got too much paint on, and it kind of changes in shade, and then just bringing that down in the middle as well. So I'm just going to do that again with my smaller round tip brush next. So I'm just going to get next a lighter colour. So I'm going to go for one of my lighter blues now, just making sure that you've not got too much paint on, and just bringing that down. So the amount of brush strokes that you do, so whether you do short brush strokes or longer brush strokes, kind of affects the technique as well. So we're just kind of filling this in with those different shades, making sure not to add any water to your brush, making sure your brush is dry, and just playing around with those different colours as well. So I'm just making sure I'm going around that curve as well. This is why it's good to have your pointed brush for this one, just because it's tricky to get around those curves with your flat brush. So I'll just hold it a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just following those pencil marks I've made, and I'm just with my brush. So you'll see that my brush is quite you know, rough at the bottom. That's good for doing your dry brushing technique. You don't want to have it loaded with paint. And then going for another colour. So you don't really need to worry too much about washing your brush loads when you're alternating between these colours, because they're all just different shades of blue. It can be quite nice to have a little bit of a mix between them as well. Yeah, so I'm just filling in all that sky using this dry brush technique here. So just think about the direction and the flow of your brush strokes as well. So you want to be working into that curl, not going in just random directions. You want that you're really controlling that movement with your brush strokes. So I'm just going to quickly touch on mixing a little bit of orange as well. So for the moon and the stars here, we've got like different yellows and oranges in there. So I'll just touch quickly on that. And we're going to use that same technique. We're going to use the dry brushing just to fill in the little bit of light that's coming from the moon and from the stars. So to mix an orange, you want to... So you can use all parts of your palette as well. If you're just wanting to do a small amount of colour, you can just use the middle of your palettes. You know, when I'm painting, my palette is pretty much covered in colour because I like to just mix a little bit at a time. So when you're mixing a colour, start with your lighter colour. So orange is kind of it's an easy colour to mix, but it can be hard to get the right tone of orange. So too much red can really drown out an orange. So just be really cautious with your red. So you want 1 part yellow and then just a tiny little bit of red. So like a 1/4 part. And then just giving that a mix. So we don't want it to be too orange, we want it to be like a nice light orange. And then we're going to kind of highlight the moon shape here with your orange. Again, making sure you haven't got too much of your colour on there, so it's so we can start using that dry brush technique. So what I do is I go around the moon shape with the orange and then just do that dry brush technique around it, just so it looks like that light's reflecting into the sky. So I don't want to add too much of it, and then just on the stars a little bit there as well. So I've marked out those stars just with my pencil, just filling in a little bit of that with the orange, and then just going in for with the yellow. So you can mix a little bit of white in with the yellow as well. That gives you a nice like lemony tone rather than it being a really harsh yellow. It's always nice to kind of change the shade from the colour that's directly in the tube. So I'm still working in that same well, and I'm just adding a little bit of white to that now and just giving it a little bit of a mix, and that'll just give you just a bit more variation to the tones. And if you've got any excess paint, just wiping that off and then just filling that in. Yeah. So next I'm going to move on to showing you the next technique, the next brush technique, which is the double and triple load. So this is a really popular technique in Impressionist art, which is kind of how it sounds really. You're just loading up your paintbrush with 2 different shades. So, you know, I've done my dry brushing on here, and next what we're going to do is we're going to fill in all of that space with those different shades. So like I said at the beginning, this is quite a time consuming process, so it's all about just taking your time with it, enjoying it, just layering and layering and layering those colours. So This next bit is you can use your flat brush or you can use your round brush as well. So I'm going to show you both. I'm just going to show you how that looks. So your flat brush is really great for doing kind of really static straight lines, which looks really good. So you can see here, I'll just show you a little bit up close. It's just building up all those lines. So with the double and triple load technique, you want to kind of take two colours. So you're dipping it in one colour. So I'm going to go for my dark blue and then I'm going to go for a lighter blue. And I'm just dipping that straight in. So yeah, that's why I said don't worry about contaminating your colours. So you've got, see if you can find the camera, you've got two colours loaded on your brush there. And then what we're going to do is just paint that on. And what happens is it kind of blends those two colours as you're painting. Which is a really nice technique, and it just gives your piece a little bit of tone as you paint it as well. So as you drag the brush down, it like kind of blends those two colours together. So we've got the double one, and then you can go for like a triple one as well. So you're just layering up those colours and just filling it. Yeah, so just really going over those dry brush marks, layering up those colours, just experimenting with those tones. Yeah, so can you see how it started to mix them as I pull the brush down? So I'm using my flat brush here and I'm just following over all those marks, just filling it completely in. Yeah, going for a different shade, double load now. I'm just bringing those lines in. Yeah, and you can also use your flat brush as well for this bit, your round brush, sorry. Just loading those colours up. So I've got my light blue, medium blue, I'll go for that blue as well. And then I'm just, as I'm painting, dragging those colours through. Right, so obviously you'll just keep on doing this until you've filled it up. I'll just show you briefly as well. So on your mountains and hills, same technique. We're just gonna load up those colours and just bring some texture to that. So think about the tone that you're using on there. So you'll want your greeny blue tones on the hills here, and we're just gonna fill that in with different lines, and explore the different qualities of your two brushes as well. So it's good to use your finer brush for this. It doesn't really matter if it's your straight or your round tip brush, they both work the same for this bit. So just filling in lots of lines on there, and then once you've covered the cat, the final step is just adding light. So, you know, at this stage it's pretty much almost ready. It just needs that light adding to it. So for the final step, what we're going to do is just use your light white colours and your light oranges and yellows and highlight where that light is going. So just get a little bit of white. So I can see here, so I'm just going to grab my other cat. So I'm just going to show you this one up close a little bit. So you can see here, the light kind of comes down here, it accentuates that movement within there, and then the light's reflecting from the moon up here onto the hills. So you want to add that yellow down on the hills as well, and then it coming from the stars. So this is where we're thinking about light and adding that light in. So just same technique, we're going to just use whites and light yellow colours and just really fill that whole area now. So you want quite a lot on your brush for this because we want it to be nice and thick, and you're just building up where that white is going. Yeah, so I'm starting working my way down, just filling in where I want there to highlight that light and that movement within the sky. And then just a little bit down here as well on the very bottom on the hills. Yeah, so this gives you a nice sense of where that light from the moonlight is hitting the hills down here. Yeah. And then just a final step is which I've done on this one. Of course, it's up to you. You don't have to. Is I've just kind of highlighted the outer rim of the ceramic by painting it with a dark blue. Just helps to kind of frame it a little bit. But again, you don't have to. It's an optional step. Right, so that's the abstract cat. I'm sure you're all still busy painting away because there's a lot of steps to that one, and it's quite time consuming but very relaxing as well. So on that note, I think it'd be nice to take a little break. I'm going to grab myself a coffee, and when we come back to the Craftalong, we'll be doing the cat face. So we're going to be looking at the realistic fur technique and how to paint a cat face. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
So just to add another thing as well, of course you probably haven't finished your painting. If you do want to go back over the video, as soon as we're done with the live, it will be published into the group, and at that point you can skip back through the video at your own leisure and yeah, happily paint away. Okay, well yeah, we'll see you in 5 or 10 minutes.
Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you had a nice little break. I've got myself a coffee, so I'm ready for the next cat face. So we're going to be looking now at the classic cat. So I am going to be focusing this tutorial on how to paint realistic fur. So I'm basing my cat piece on my cat Roo, and she is a tabby cat, so I'm going to be working with those colours. But during the Craftalong I will talk about different types of cats as well, and you don't have to go for a really realistic looking cat. You can go for more of a simple style as well. So just, you know, whatever you feel most comfortable with. It's your piece of art, so you want to be happy with it. So just as I'm going through my tutorial, I will talk a little bit about cats that are a little bit more tricky to paint. So for example, cats that are one colour. I always get asked a lot about, like, oh, my cat's all white, how does that work when you're doing fur? And again, when you've got an all black cat. So don't worry if your cat is one colour. I will talk a little bit about that as well when we go to painting the fur. So before we start, you might need a few extra things. So a pencil, a rubber, some water, and for this one you may, this is an optional step as well, but you may want to grab a ruler as well, and this is just if you want to be precise about measuring out where the eyes and stuff go. Okay, so I'm going to switch to a close-up view now, and we're going to start by drawing out the face. So during the tutorial, like I did with the abstract cat, I'm going to have kind of a few steps ahead prepared, because when you're painting you have to allow for it to dry, and especially with this technique there is a lot of layers to it, so there is a lot of different drying times. So I am going to kind of skip ahead and have little bits of Blue Peter moments where I grab a different cat. So don't panic about keeping up with me, because obviously I am going to be working on a different cat as I go. So I just thought I'd show you a little bit about the different styles of cat. So we've got more of a basic cat here, which is quite simple, but I think it looks really cute. Then we've got more of a intermediate level, which is, you know, not layering that fur up as much, but using some of them techniques. And then we've got more of a realistic style cat as well. So, you know, hopefully there's something in this tutorial for every level and ability. Right, okay, so we're going to make a start by drawing out the design. So I have made a start here already, so I'm going to hold it up close so you can see. So what I've done here is I've used a bit of a grid method to draw out where those features are. So I'm just going to talk through it, but you know, you don't have to follow my exact measurements here, but you know, you can just freehand it. It's not, you don't have to do this. This is an optional step, but if you are struggling to get those eyes and stuff in the right place. So what I've done here is I've measured out just below where the ears are. So I've drawn a straight line just below where the ears end. So just drawing a straight line across there, and then I've measured about 1.5 centimeters down, so anywhere between 1 centimetre and 1.5 centimeters, made a little mark, and then I've got another line there. So we've got a horizontal, vertical line, sorry, going straight across, and then one going up as well. Yeah, so with the line at the top we're going to go, so these are handmade ceramics, as I mentioned at the beginning, so you know, they will have slight variations, but the hooks are, you know, a general middle point for the piece. So what I've done for the lines here is I've measured just at each side of the hook, and then I've kept it at 1 centimetre Yeah, so I've just used those hooks as a little bit of a guide, and I've got 2 lines going down. So we've got kind of a cross going on in the middle, and then there's like a little box where the 2 bits meet. So what I start by doing is drawing out the nose first. So I've kind of done the nose just below where that box is. So to draw the nose, I've just done like an M shape, and then just brought it down, created the nostril, and then come down into a little bit of a point. So we've got that nose to begin. And then from the middle point of the nose, I've drawn the line down to start the mouth, and then just coming right down to the lines to each bit there. And this is where you can decide what kind of expression to have. You can keep it going down if you've got more of a grumpy cat, or you can give it a little bit of a flick if you want it to have a little bit of a smile going on. So once you've drawn the mouth and the nose, then we're going to move on to the eyes. So what I do with the eyes is I'm starting in this corner here where that box is, and I'm just going to draw a line right up till I get to that top line, and then bringing it round and down to create a circle. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, starting here at the box, the edge of the box, bringing it straight up till I touch the top of that line, and then making a circle, and then coming back to the beginning. And you can add, if you want, a little bit of a flick at the end if you want it to have more like cat-like eyes, but again, you can keep them more round as well. It depends what kind of expression you want your cat to have. And then just marking out next any fur, so it's good to do a little bit of an eye here as well. So I just mark out where I want those eyes to be, so just drawing kind of a thin pupil in the middle there. And then I'm going to go for a tabby, so I'm just going to mark out a little bit of the markings what my cat has. It's usually good as well to have a little bit of a reference photo, because if your cat's anything like mine, you know, she won't stay still to have a close look at her.
So we've just got a question there, Naomi. Somebody's asked, how far down is the nose?
So I've just done it just slightly below that box, so maybe 1/2 centimetre below the box. But again, it can be a little bit closer or a little bit lower down, as long as it's not, you know, too far down. So yeah, I've just done it about 1/2 centimetre below the box. So this next bit, I'm just filling out any marks that my cat has, but just loosely. So this is just a bit of a sketch, you know, it doesn't need to be perfect. Marking out where the ears are going to go. Right, so once we've done the sketch of our cat, the next bit that we're going to work on is doing the eye. So I'm not going to focus too much on the eyes, because this is kind of an additional optional step. So in your pack you've got the 4 colours for the fur. It complicates things quite a lot with eye colour, because obviously a lot of the cats have different coloured eyes, and you know, there's not that many options on the website to add loads of variations of things. So we have kept it separate. So if you did want to buy an extra eye colour, you know, if you've got acrylic paints, you can use an acrylic paint of your own, or if you did want to buy any eye colours from us, we'll drop a link in the comments to the eye colour and sealer option. But again, you don't have to do it, you can just keep them white if you wanted to. So I won't, I'm not going to focus too much on it, because I don't want to overcomplicate things. But what we're going to start, and this is what I do if ever you're drawing or painting animals or people, it's good to start with the eyes, because I feel like it really sets the tone for the face. So my cat has green eyes, so I'm gonna start working with some greens. So you want to have a light green and a dark green, which I'm going to use from my tutorial from earlier. So we want to have a dark green kind of in the middle, So, you know, starting with your dark green where the pupil is. So you can see here I've already done this eye, and what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of replicate that as we go, but just briefly. So I'm just going to start with my darker shade just around that pupil, and then I'm going to paint the darker colours just to the edges as well, so that gives it like a little bit of definition. So I'm going for my dark colour to begin with, and then I'm going to swap to my lighter colour. So I'm just going to work that lighter colour in there.
So, Naomi, while you're doing that, somebody's just said that they've got 3 rescue ragdolls with a seal point face, which might be quite hard to do. Is it still possible?
So with the darker colour, yeah, that's still possible. When we go through the fur painting, this is when you'll kind of get to understand like long-haired cats and how to paint long-hair fur, because obviously it is a lot different. But yeah, it's all about just creating a lot of tone and using different brush strokes. So I'm just blending those 2 colours together. So I've got my darker colour on the outside, and then I'm using my lighter green in the middle. And then what we're going to do next is go in with the black. So just going to highlight around that eye. So just with your fine brush, we're going to kind of create a little bit of shadow on here. So I'm just starting from the edge, and I'm bringing that black up into the eye, and then bringing it down to create the kind of corner of the eye. And then just filling in that bit. So we kind of like blend those colours together to create that corner of the eye. So what you want to do next, once you've added your 2 colours, is you want to allow that to dry, and then we're going to highlight it with a little bit of white. So you do need to make sure it's dry before doing this bit. I'm just going to show you. So you're just taking your white and you're just highlighting the very top where the light would be. So it kind of comes from the top here, and you kind of bring it down just to highlight where that light comes in. And then with your black just going in for the pupil. So when you're painting eyes as well, it is all about taking your time and doing it step by step as well. So I'm just going to show you up close this one here. So you can see the eyes, they've got, oh, let's go forward a bit, there we go. So they've got lots of different colours in there. They've got a little bit of green, a little bit of brown, yeah, and I've let it dry between the coats, and then I've added the different variations. So like, I guess if you look at close photos of an eye, you'll be able to see those different colours as well. And then I'm just added a little white white dot. So just once that eye has dried, just with your white, you just want to add, and it does really, I think, make a difference adding this little dot. So just a little bit of white paint on the end of your brush, and just where that light would hit the cat. So I don't know if I'm close enough. So you just put in that little dot there. And it just really sets the eye off. I don't know, I think it does make it look a lot nicer. So I usually do two. I do one at the top and then a really small one just down at the bottom where it would be reflected. Yeah, so you can see how it starts to kind of come to life a little bit. So next, what we're going to start doing is working on the fur under sketch. So this is what I call it, but it's kind of like the base coat of the fur. I think sometimes I confuse people when I say under sketch, but we are going to be painting it because we've already done our pencil sketch. We're going to do like a base coat for the fur now. Now a lot of this base coat is going to be covered by the fur. So when we're talking about cats that are one colour, you know, they still have a base coat of darker colours. So I'm just going to hold up this one here, which is a white cat. So this side here is the under sketch. So you can see it's lots of dark greys and different variations of greys. And then as we paint the fur, it becomes white, and we add some yellows in there as well. So all cats that are one colour actually do have a few tones of colour in there. So with your black cats, they have lots of browns and variations of browns and greys, and with your white cats they have like a lot of variations of greys and yellowy whites and like beigey colours as well. And that's how you get that tone and texture, by mixing those variations of the single tone. So for the undersketch, we're going to start by mixing some brown tones. So I am doing a tabby cat, so I'm going to be mixing browns. But of course, if you're doing a different coloured cat, so if you're doing a ginger cat, for example, you want to be mixing up lots of tones of browns and orange. If you're doing a black cat, lots of tones of browns and greys. And then your white cat, lots of tones of beige and grey. So to start with, I'm going to just mix a dark brown. So I've got my dark brown, so I'm going to go for 1 part brown, 1 part brown, 1 part black. So when I say parts, I just basically am meaning a little bit of a squeeze. So I'm going to go for 1 part brown and then 1 part black. So kind of half part black, really, not quite full. You don't want it to be equal, you want it to be about half part, sorry. So just a little bit. Oh, I got a bit extra. So if you missed the abstract tutorial, when we are mixing colours in your palette, it's good to start by placing the colours on the top here, and then we'll kind of bring it down into the middle when we mix it, and that helps you to get a lot more control over your colour mixing and helps to eliminate the, I don't know, you know, when you try to mix a colour and then you end up with too much, or it's not the right shade and you have to add more, and yeah, and it just ends up quite wasteful that way. So if you just keep a little bit, mixing a little bit at a time, and start at the top of your well and then drag those colours down. So I'm mixing here a dark brown, so I'm going to drag my brown into the middle, and then I'm going to add a little bit of black. Yeah, so it's all about just doing it a little bit at a time until you've reached that desired shade of brown. So this is just going to be like a deep brown. So just giving it a good mix. You don't want too much black because you know, you want to be able to see that it still is a nice brown colour. So if you don't use all that black, that's fine. That's why it's good to have it at the edge. And then you can always just use it as a single colour then. So I'm happy with that shade for mine. So I've got the dark brown here. So for the sketch, we're going to use a dry brush technique. So you want to make sure that you haven't got too much of that colour on your brush, and then what we're going to do is kind of paint on that sketch. So your pencil marks that you've got here, and you know, if your cat hasn't got any patterns or anything, we'll still be looking at where the light's hitting it. So where the fur clumps and where the light hits it is what we're focusing on in the under sketch. So just with your brush, make sure you've not got too much paint on there, and you're just gonna like fill in that area. So just really light pressure with your brush, making sure not to apply too much paint. We're just filling in. If you've got too much paint, you can wipe a bit off on your palette. We're just going to fill in where those colours are. So I'm just working from that sketch that I've done. I'm just filling in a little bit of this colour. So this is an undercoat, so a lot of this colour is going to be covered when we do the next step. So don't feel too precious over it at this stage. So what we're doing is I'm just marking out where all those darker colours are. So if you've got a lighter cat, where those thicker bits of fur are and where it's starting to clump up as well. So I've got my dark brown there, and next I'm going to mix up more of a kind of orangey brown. So I'm going to use 1 part orange and 1 part brown. Just giving that a mix together. So we've got a bit of a kind of browny orange. You can always add more. If you're not happy with the tone, you keep adjusting it until it's the colour that you want it to be. And then just making sure that you've not got too much on your brush. And then you can always swap to using your bigger brush at this stage as well. So I was using my small brush then, but I think I'm going to go in with my bigger brush. And then just make sure it's nice and dry, loading up that colour and just working that into your painting. So keeping those brush strokes nice and gentle and just filling in all of that space. So you'll be surprised at how many different tones cat's fur has, especially like your tabby cats. They have so many variations of oranges, greys, browns. So it's all about just exploring that colour mixing and just getting as much variation as you can. So for this next one, I'm going to mix up another brown. So I'm going to go for 1 part brown, 1 part orange, and then half part black.
So Sharon's just mentioned that she has a grey cat.
A grey cat. Yeah, so just mixing up lots of shades of grey. So you can always work with mixing greys with like a little bit of brown in, mixing a grey with a little bit of orange. Yeah, so and if you do have any extra colours as well, like a little bit of blue, can be quite good to mix up a nice different shade of grey. It's all about just exploring mixing those colours. But yeah, I know some cats are trickier than others. So just mixing those colours together. So we've got like a nice, this makes like a nice chocolatey brown. So I've got this one here, so I'm just filling in those bits with my dry brush technique. So again, don't be too worried about this bit because most of it's going to get painted over. So we're just marking out where that fur clumps together, where we've got longer hair and shorter hair. So with this bit, I'm marking out where the hair at the edges goes a little bit longer. So just building that up. So I'm doing bigger brush strokes towards the edge, and then shorter brush strokes in the middle where the fur is shorter. So you really fill in all of this space up. So I'm just going to go through one more colour mix of like a lighter brown next, and then I'm going to show you kind of what the under sketch painting should look like. So for a light brown, it's 1 part brown and then 1 part white. And again, adjusting the ratios of the paint will give you those different tones within the same mix. So just mixing that together, and we've got like a light brown. And I'm just going to fill in just a little bit of that. So I'm just going to fill in where that colour's a bit lighter. And you know, probably with the tabby cat as well at this stage, mixing up a bit of a grey would be good. So a bit of black and a bit of white. So you want 2 parts white and then 1/4 or less of black. You really don't need much black to make grey. Right, so I'm just going to skip now to show you the under sketch. So this one here, you can see the start of my under sketch painting there, and then once I'm moving on to my next layer. So I'm going to show you just 2 examples here. So we've got one example here which has got a light under sketch, and then one where the under sketch is a lot darker and it's filled in completely. So obviously this is like half of it done, half of it is the under sketch, just to show you the difference between the 2. So you can see that second layer really does make a lot of difference. So this is kind of like your base coat, what we're doing right now, if that's helpful. Yeah.
Can you just go over what dry brushing is again?
So the dry brushing technique is just where your brush is dry, so just making sure that you haven't got lots of water on there. Then you just want to get a little bit of your paint, so just a little bit of paint, and then you just going straight on. So it kind of like paints it just a little bit, and you get like these extra marks. So if I just show you on this one here, so when you paint it on, it doesn't quite cover it with paint. You get like a little bit of a wispy effect to it. So you can see here, when I'm painting it, I'm just using a really small amount of paint, and I'm just nice light pressure, and you can see it doesn't coat it in paint, it just like kind of brushes over it. So you'll see you have bits where more paint comes on and like where it goes a bit thinner. So it's all about like a little bit at a time, and your brush tip should look like a little bit rough as well, and that gives you that nice organic feel to it, rather than just a solid block paint stroke. It's just like a little bit softer, and gives you like a little bit more control over those marks. So it's all about just a tiny bit of paint on there and no water as well. Yeah, so you can see. So I'll just show you the difference with a brush stroke so this is it when it's not dry brushed and it's got lots of paint on. If I just do a stroke, you can see the difference between the dry brush and the normal brush technique. So the dry brush is a lot thinner and it has a lot more kind of softer finish, and almost looks like it's washed with the colour a little bit, whereas in this gives you more of a solid block colour, which we don't want on the under sketch. We want it to be more lighter, so it's a light pressure as well when you're brushing it on. And if you've got too much brush on your paint, just wipe a little bit off, or wipe a bit on your palette as well.
Too much paint on your brush.
Too much paint on your brush. Right. Okay, so if there's any more questions or anything about the under sketch painting, just let me know. So once that's all dried, actually before we move on to the next bit, I'm just going to talk quickly about mixing the colour for the ears and the nose. So obviously you haven't got a pink in there in your colour pack, so I'm just going to show you how to mix like a light beige colour. So for this you want 1 part orange, and you just really only need a little bit of this colour, you don't need very much of it. So we're going to go for 1 part orange, 2 parts white, and then just a 1/4 part of your brown. So not very much of that, just a little tiny bit, and it makes like a nice peachy colour. So just dragging those colours down into the middle, just giving that a little mix. So you really don't need a lot of it, it's just a lot of your lighter colour. And then it mixes like a nice, I'll show you on this one, like a nice peach for the nose and for the ears. So a bit more orange there. And of course, if you do have access to any other colours, you can just add a little bit of red in there, and that gives you like a nice pink colour. But if you're just working with these colours, mixing up a nice peach for that nose and for the ear is good to do now. Yeah, so I'll just show you a bit up close of that colour. Yeah, so once it dries, it does look a nice, it does look kind of almost like a peachy colour. Okay, so next we're going to move on to doing the detailing phase. So this is where we look at the individual hairs, which sounds really tedious, and it kind of is. But you know, it's fun, it's a relaxing process, and it is lots of like layering up colours and small precise brush strokes. So we're going to start by using our thin brush, so the smaller brush of the two, and we're going to look at individual hairs and the kind of fur that your cat has as well. So if you've got a short haired cat, you want to do quite small considered strokes. If you've got a longer haired cat, it's bigger, longer brush strokes. So just as in a comparison with these two, this one is a shorter furred one and this is longer furred. So if you can see on the detailed side of the two here, I've just used on this one longer brush strokes, and this one is much shorter. So after you've done your under sketch and that's all dry, what we're going to do next is look, so it's good to have a photo of your cat as well, if you've got one that you can work from, it is helpful. So I'm going to start around the nose, and then I'm going to work up from the middle, and I'm going to go with the flow of where the fur goes. So this cat has like a short fur around the nose, and then it gets longer towards the end of the face here. So I'm going to start with the nose. I've just got a little bit of black on there, and I'm just creating a bit of an outline around that nose to create a little bit of shadow. And then I'm going to start with some really small brush marks, so they're almost at this point like little dots, and I'm just bringing those up. So the more time you spend on this, the more effective it looks as well. So you know, if you did want to not spend too long on it, then you can just, you know, go for this next step. But there is another step after this as well, if you do want to really refine that fur. So for this, where the fur is short, I'm doing nice small brush strokes. So I'm just working where that colour is, and just nice small marks. And then as I get towards the top here, the fur starts to become longer. So I'm going to go in with a different colour now, and just bring that up. So this next bit here is where I'm going to show you the, like we did in the abstract cat, we're going to do a little bit of the brush stroke technique, which is called double and triple load brush technique. So this is where we layer colours together, and that helps to give us a little bit more texture to the strokes. So it's pretty much how it sounds really. We want to be like loading up the brush with two different colours. So where my cat starts to have quite a lot of variation here, I'm going to load up a few colours. So I'm going to dip it in a little bit of the dark and then a little bit of the lighter colour here as well. So I've loaded up two colours on my brush, and then where the brush strokes are going to start to be a little bit longer, I'm just going to take that brush and just make those big bold marks towards the top. And as you do it, the colours kind of blend together. So we'll just load up some of those colours. So I've got a little bit of a little bit of white, a little bit of orange, and then I'm just layering up those colours. And it just kind of essentially like mixes it as you paint it as well. So it's not just like a flat colour, it adds like a little bit more depth to it. So I'm working with the movement of where the hair goes. So it's quite stiff around the nose because it's really short fur, and then it goes a little bit more fluid towards the top. So it's longer brush strokes to get that feel for longer fur. And then I'm just going to mix up a little grey because I didn't make one. So just a bit of white and then a tiny bit of black. Just going to pinch a bit of that from there. And then just really going for it with those brush strokes. Yeah, really looking at your cat and filling in all those bits. And where we have some denser parts, so in the undersketch I mentioned about, you know, filling in a lot of where the fur clumps together. So when you get to these points on your detailing phase, you want to like kind of do thicker strokes together to kind of create that clump of fur. So as well, it's worth saying that if you look at fur or hair, it's not always going in the same direction. So you do want to go in different directions, in almost like a little bit of a cross hatch style. So going one way, then going the other way as well, and that just gives it that more feel of like movement to it.
So we've got a couple of questions, Naomi.
Yeah.
Jill has said that do you use the double and triple load techniques if you just have a black cat?
Yeah, so I would definitely. So with the black cat, you want to double and triple load those different shades. So for example, if you mix up like a chocolatey brown colour and then layer it with a little bit of black and then do that double and triple loads with those colours, it just gives each hair a little bit more texture to it that way. And it I don't know, it just stops it from looking too flat then.
There was one more question as well from Claire. Just can you go over how to make the pinky peach colour for the nose again?
Yeah, so that is a 1 part orange, 2 parts white, and then a tiny little bit of the brown. So it's basically white, a little bit of orange, and then a tiny bit of the brown. Is there any more questions or anything?
For now.
Yeah. So yeah, so when we're talking about like fur and hair, it's all about going in different directions as well. So almost like cross hatch patterns, and that gives a lot more movement to the hair. So especially when you've got like longer furred cats, you really do want to stop it from being all the same direction. Otherwise it can just look a little bit flat. You want to keep on moving your brush so it's going one way and then it's going the opposite way, and it just gives it a lot more movement as well then. So for this next bit, this is where we are filling up that space with these brush marks. So you're mainly using your darker colours at this point as well. So you're focusing on those darker parts of the fur, and then we're going to go on to doing the lighter bit on the next stage. So just working your way through that. Of course, like this is quite time consuming, and I'm not going to be able to finish doing mine. So I am going to move on to the next step. But if I do have any more questions before that, just let me know. And I'm going to go through like this part next, around the mouth where it's lighter, and then around the ears next. So the final step is what I call the refining and adding light step. So for this bit, this is where we are highlighting that fur and starting to refine where that light is hitting the piece. So you can kind of see on these two pieces here where I've started to add lighter colours. So this is where we want to have more whites and light greys. So I'm just going to get myself prepared. So if you look at the fur, you'll notice, especially around the ears, the cats have a lot of white hair around here. So you want to kind of build that up. So you want to be at this stage, you're using the paint quite thick, so you're loading it on quite thick on your brush, and then we're just filling in where that white hair goes along the ears. So it kind of comes up over the where we've done the peach, and just using quite confident strokes. So keep quite confident with your brush, make sure you've got a nice anchored hand, and you go in like this with it. Yeah, so nice considered strokes, longer strokes for longer fur, shorter strokes for shorter bits. So at the top I'm going to use some quite big strokes, so just adding that fur in there. And then for the shorter bits, so along the nose a lot of light hits here, so I'm going to add in lots of little really fine details of white. So what I'm doing here is I'm just doing almost like dots where that light hits the nose there, and it just gives it a little bit more of a 3D feel to it as well. And then around here, around the mouth, is a lot of change of direction of that fur as well, which can be quite tricky to do on a flat shape. So just looking at your picture and working that fur. So I've kind of come from the nose, brought the direction of that hair down, and then I'm going out with it there. So just working it out so it kind of creates like that feel of a nose there. And then around here under the eyes as well, that needs a lot of detailing. So just adding those different tones underneath here, so just working right under there and just looking at your cat and just looking at the direction that that fur's moving. So I'm just highlighting where any of that light would be hitting the fur. So I'm just going to skip now to showing you kind of how the finished piece looks. So you can kind of see where I've added a lot of layers and a lot of texture to this piece, and just keep on layering it up, and it starts to like build that definition in the individual hairs, especially around the ears. That bit really does make quite a lot of difference when it's got those fine white hairs around it. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk quickly. I know you're all still going to be painting, so don't panic that I've kind of ending here, because obviously I've got a step ahead all the time. So I'm just going to talk briefly about kind of the next steps with your cat. So if you did want to seal your ceramics, you can do. So I'm just going to show you, I mean you don't have to, but it just gives it a little bit more of a nicer finish, or it gives it a little bit more of a waterproof, water resistance to it. Although I wouldn't, advise keeping it outside or anything. Sorry, I'm just gonna move this around so you can see. So these are two pieces. So one has been sealed, which is this one, and one hasn't. And it is you can't really see much difference, apart from this one has a little bit more of a sheen to it, if you can catch the light on it. And then this one obviously doesn't. But if you did want any sealer or anything, you can use craft sealer if you've got it at home, or if you did want to buy any sealer from us, it'll just be on the link with the eye colours. Or if you do have any questions about sealing, or any advice or anything, then feel free to send me a message and I can advise you where to get it, or where what sealer to use. And let me just, so they're the examples of two different ones, but it's an optional step. You don't have to seal it if you don't want to. And yeah, finally that's it from me. So thank you very much for joining us this morning doing the pottery painting craft along. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I always find pottery painting a really nice, relaxing activity to do. It's really nice to do with friends as well. So if you've never tried pottery painting before, and you've enjoyed it today, do check out your local pottery painting place, because it is a lovely thing to do. And we've done it with acrylic paints, but it also looks great with glazes as well. If you did still want to buy a kit, maybe if you've seen the other cat shape and you want to give that a try, the kits are still available to buy on the Cats Protection website. And if you've really enjoyed it today and you think, I really want to give clay a go, we do still have the summer kits available as well, and they still have the donation to Cats Protection too. If you've enjoyed doing this tutorial and you'd like to see more from us, you can give us a follow on social media. So our kind of tag is Jasmine Pottery Studios, and we're always posting lots of like crafty stuff on there as well. Finally, if anybody's got any questions or anything, we're going to be around for a few minutes just to get back to you on those questions. And yeah.
And last thing is about, we want to see their pictures.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So just please make sure you share any photos of your cats that you've painted. I have been seeing the ones that I've already started, and I've been really enjoying seeing those. I always think after a craft along, the group goes it's so exciting to see what everybody's made, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing especially because there'll be so much variation in this Craftalong. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what you've made. So please do share on the group or share on social media and give us a tag.
The tag is at Craft for Cats.
So it's at Craft for Cats.
So we've just had a question before we end the video. Can we just quickly show how to do whiskers?
Whiskers, yeah. I didn't actually put whiskers on mine. When I tried to do the whiskers, it is a little bit tricky. I'll show you on this one here. So with the whiskers, I was doing it with white. So you want a really fine brush for this bit. So I had my white paint, and then just the trick is not to put too much on there. And you want to make sure it's completely dry as well before you do the whiskers. And then you start in, so I've done these little dots here where the whiskers should go. And then you're starting from those dots and you're just making sure you've got a nice steady hand and you're thinking about where it's going to come out. So obviously the brush stroke that you make is going to be the direction of it. So you want to make sure that it's going the right way and it's not sticking up in a random place. So you're going from the dot and you're coming straight out. So from the dot, coming straight down. Yeah, so you can also move your hold your ceramic as well while you do it and move it around. Sorry, I'm just loading up some more white on there. So just make sure I can see. Yeah, so you're starting from there and you're going straight down. So it kind of starts with a thicker part at the bottom and then goes to a thinner point at the end. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that very clearly with the camera. Yeah, so is there any more questions or anything? No? So we will be around for a little bit as well to kind of get back to your questions and answer anything that might come up once we've ended the live feed. But we do have a class at 2 o'clock, so I probably will go a little bit quiet this afternoon. But I will catch up later on in the evening if I have missed anything. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for helping to support the Cats Protection, and I can't wait to find out how much we've raised together to help all the cats and kittens in their care of Cats Protection. So thank you, goodbye.